I would like to share my story of using We the People, the Citizen and the Constitution. Here's their textbook. This is the junior high version, and here is the high school version. And kind of explain to you how that has helped me, or had helped me, to become a better teacher, and how it helped the students. The program actually began in 1987 on the 200th anniversary of the writing of the Constitution. This year, by the way, is the 230th celebration of the writing of the Constitution. President Reagan wondered at that point why there was no celebration for such an important event as the writing and signing of the Constitution. He put together a task force of government individuals, including Chief Justice Warren Burger, to head it up, and most of the congressmen were also on that board that he put together. In typical government fashion, they sought out a contractor to actually do the real work, and they found a group called the Center for Civic Education, which operates out of California, and had been doing a lot of work on political and government curriculum development. The center put together a program which, rather than shooting off a few fireworks and having a parade, developed an educational program that ended up being pretty life-changing for my style of teaching and also for my students. So my story is that a fellow teacher at Orem High actually started the program, started the class, she called it the Constitutional class, in 1988 for the purpose of utilizing the We the People program and participating in the competition. In her second year, she won the state competition and was able to go back to take her class back to DC to compete in the national competition. She also decided that at that point that she had too much on her plate, and so she wanted to turn the class over to me. And I was invited to go back to DC with her class and see how the competition operated. That began 15 great years that energized and altered my teaching and deeply impacted a few hundred students in the process. As I walked into the class the next year, I realized that I had some of the best and brightest that OHS had to offer. I also noticed that the We the People text was not terribly large. Now, today, if you look at this book, it's increased in size about double of what it was in 1989. Still a very easy to understand book, and well written, gets right to the point of many issues, and encourages the students to go beyond the textbook and to do their research outside of what the textbook presents. So I noticed that the textbook was fairly small, that the students were fairly bright, and I decided it might be time to introduce an AP government class at Orem High, which we did not have. That was done pretty easily. There wasn't much kickback on that. The students were appreciative. I got support from the administration as well. So we began the AP government class, which was a year-long class. Now, generally in an AP government class, you'd spend the first half or 3/4 working on United States government, and then a quarter to a semester working on comparative government. I spent most of the time on AP or on American government, and then kind of mopped up with comparative government as time permitted, and also based on how much time we had because of the competition that we'd gotten involved in, whether or not we had won the state level and gone to DC or not. Throughout those about 15 years that I did it, we did maintain about a 70% passage rate on the AP test, using primarily the We the People material, and then just showing how the test was set up. They had the information from the AP, or from the We the People information. Now, I bring up the genesis of this class to illustrate that many teachers have used the program in many different ways to fit their needs. And sometimes the class dictates how the program will be used. At other times, teachers find ways to adjust the classes to accommodate the program and the competition. And of course, the underlying root of this is to educate these future citizens that we have responsibility for. So let me just give you an overview of the program in a nutshell. The center developed an educational program that combined it with an element of competition. It's designed for the entire class, not just a few of the standouts. The entire class is divided into 6 groups. They can be from 3 to 6 members. 4 is kind of the ideal, as I found. The textbook is designed by the center, is like I say, a fairly easy read unit or easy read treatment. That is, lo and behold, divided into 6 units. And so it goes right along with the competition. Here's I don't know if you can see that, but the table of contents. Each group is assigned to become experts of one of the units, and the center provides a set of questions that they can kind of use to guide their studies. I'll show you those in just a second. The questions, however, are nice and relevant. They're timely. They're fairly deep, and so the students, if they're going to really get into this, they have to do quite a bit of research and work beyond what the book presents for them. The students then of each group will collaborate and come up with a 4-minute prepared response to each of those 3 questions, and store away, hopefully in their brain somewhere, enough information surrounding those questions to be able to respond to the judges in their 6 minutes of follow-up questions. So a full and open verbal and cerebral alternative assessment that can be judged and graded by someone else, not the teacher, which allows you then to be on the team of the students. I'll get to that concept in a minute. And the other thing I found is that being able and ready to answer questions thrown at them and to express their own opinions and then be able to back up those opinions is a whole new set of skills that really aren't used in the traditional school setting ever. So I found this to be refreshing. The students liked that concept and worked well with it. So you have 4 minutes and 6 minutes, so it's supposed to look like a Senate hearing, or I should say like a Senate hearing is supposed to look, wherein the Senate or judges ask the panel of experts their opinion on a subject, allowing for an opening statement and then firing off some questions to get into the details. The whole process then is 10 minutes per team. So considering a little chit-chat between the teams and before and after, you can organize the competition and really get through it in a little over an hour, depending on how chatty the judges are, I guess, because the kids don't want to talk. They just want to do their thing and get through it. The formal competition then that was set up by the center and which Congress has funded for these past 30 years comes at various levels. So in our state, we have a state coordinator and district coordinators that will set up a state competition. Money is allocated for that competition, so we feed you, and then also pay for some travel expenses and maybe even substitutes depending on the budget of that year. At the end of the competition, one high school team then wins and has the opportunity to travel to Washington, D.C. for 5 days. They spend 2 or 3 of those days, depending on how well they do, in the competition. However, the competition is only about a 2 to 3 hour section of their day, and so they're given a chance to tour the city and the monuments and visit with senators and representatives. In the evenings, they have a nice dance, they have a nice dinner at the awards ceremony, and it's quite a nice place. In fact, when I talk to my former students, that trip is always the highlight of their high school career. Now, I jumped right into the formal competition. I've also seen the program used in various other levels. I used to judge for an English teacher over at a junior high in Alpine, who used it for her speech giving unit, and she would bring in the mayor of Alpine and her son-in-law, who happened to be a lawyer, and then call me, and we became the judges for all 6 of the units. If you do the formal program, then you will go to wherever the district or the state coordinator sets it up. I believe this year it's at the University of Utah. There will be 3 different judges for each of the units, and so it's pretty fairly judged, and with 3 of them working the numbers and so forth, it gives you an opportunity to kind of back out of being the judge slash grader and let the judges take care of that aspect of it. Now, the first thing that I was most impressed with as I learned how to do this program was the team concept. And I coached a couple of sports in high school, and I was always amazed at what hellacious physical demands we could put on students because they were part of a team, and the goal of the team superseded the comfort of the individual. So to put it simply, we're all striving for the same goal, to win a state championship or whatever. The We the People competition has that same effect if you set it up that way, although now the demands are academic and intellectual. And so I could demand more from these students than I would from my other classes. Let's see. I would begin the class talking about contracts and charters and so forth, and demeaning really the whole concept of, what do they call them, a disclosure document, which is a dictatorial thing handed down by the teacher that tells the kids how they will act. Rather than that, I started my classes talking about how a charter was put together and how people came together and using the Mayflower Compact and so forth. My first textbook, by the way, also put out by the center, was this little 80-page little book, which by the 60-something page little book, which you can get from the center of the Center for Civic Education. If you buy enough of them, they only cost you $1 each. And once I got involved with this, I would have a stack of these available and give them away to my classes. I teach some college classes and also the high school classes that I taught. A very simple textbook that's just loaded with good documents, and so if you use it correctly, it can really be your textbook for about half of the year. We would study the Mayflower Compact or Mayflower Charter and show how those people put together a people first and then a government to govern those people, and how they came to consensus. And then I would kind of open that up to the class and say, this is kind of what we want to do with the class as well. This can be a little more time consuming, but it lays a foundation for a more democratic presentation, a more democratic class, and a class in which the students can buy in and become part of the learning process. One big lesson that I took from this, and I'm going a little long here, but was working in groups. And so let me just share that with you, and then I'll close with a couple of the questions. You can see how those could be used. But having to put these kids in groups, I'd always use groups as we were instructed to by the district or our teacher training and so forth, but groups never work very well. And it was interesting as I brought these kids together and told them these were kind of the ultra AP kids, and I said we're going to work in groups, and there was a collective moan from the students because their experience in groups had always been they were the ones that did all the work, and the rest of the group